So with the DSS V7, we're going to be replicating the files from a NAS share that we will create or have, and then be able to demonstrate how to use the data replication agent to replicate to a Linux operating system. So let's begin. One of the things we want to first do is go to Configuration, Volume Manager, then Volume Groups. Here you want to make sure that you do have a volume group, but we see that we've already used one, but this is where you present the RAID array, and then DSS V7 will see this in the unit manager to allow you to create volumes from. So on the left we have our default volume group, VG00. And here in our volume manager, this is where you can create many types of volumes, iSCSI, fiber channel volumes, NAS volumes, and even snapshot volumes. Now I've already created the NAS volume and assigned the snapshot volume that you see right below it to the LV000, which is our first NAS volume. It's real easy to create a NAS volume. You just go to New NAS Volume. Here you can also create your snapshot as well. Then once you create your NAS volume, very simply, just to give you an example, we'll just create a certain size. So let's just use, let's say, 10 gig. And then you'll see the next NAS volume be LV00. For our demonstration, we're going to use LV000, and then of course this is showing you how easily it is to create a new NAS volume. Then you can create a snapshot and assign the snapshot, which is what I've already done, but I'll demonstrate that again. If you click on the action pull bar button, you'll see new snapshot, and you have the option to just create the snapshot or assign it to the NAS logical volume. It's very important that you do this because data replication requires snapshot in order for you to create the task. If, however, you did forget to assign the snapshot to the NAS logical volume, you can come down here and assign it as well. Now, once I've completed that action, we should also see that the snapshot is assigned right here on the task that you see. And now we go into configuration in NAS settings. We want to make sure that the data replication agent is enabled. So here you see I have enabled it. Normally by default it is off, but here you enable it and then hit apply. Once you're done with that, then we can go to NAS resources under configuration, then go to NAS shares. Here you can create a NAS share, just very simply, just in the name field here, and assign it to the NAS logical volume, and that share will reside in that NAS logical volume. On the left, we've already created the share. Here you'll see source, and if we look at source, we've already placed some files in there. Let's go take a look at that. We go click on the path button here. You'll see that I have some directories, and I put a couple files in there. So now the whole object of this is to be able to replicate the data from DSS to a Linux operating system. So what I've done is create a virtual machine, and here you'll see that I'm using Ubuntu. And couple things I want to bring to everybody's attention is when we started doing this, it was a work in progress, meaning that we needed to do and edit certain files and create those certain files. Now I'm just using the regular desktop version of Ubuntu, but what I want to show here in this terminal window that I have is if I were to basically start the rsync, it comes with it, but I also going to need two very important files, and we had to create the rsyncd.secrets and the rsyncd.conf file. Now both those files reside in the etc directory in the Ubuntu. If we look at this, there are certain configurations and changes we made. What you're looking at in the max connections equals to the log file, that's in case you want to verify the logs from the Ubuntu side to make sure that there aren't any issues. When we first set this up, we found out there were some errors that are because we didn't have the proper rights, and of course putting this together, we thought we'd share this information with you. The next section is after the timeouts is in the brackets here. You'll see that backup is the directory that we created and where we will be replicating the DSS V7 files that are residing in that share to the backup directory here in Ubuntu. We left the default for read only equals no, and of course we specified the path, and you'll see the path here equals home/open-e, which is the Open-E name server that we put for Ubuntu, and of course the directory called backup. The rest of it, we left at the list equals yes, and a user ID and group ID we'll put it as root, and authenticated users equals Open-E. Then after that, we create the secrets file equals, and you'll see that that has to reside in the etc directory as well. So we put the rsync.secrets file in here. Let's go take a look at the rsync.secrets file. So we have created users in here, which will use the Open-E, and then the password we just created 1313. Of course, you can have others like user or or your name or whatnot. Once you have these files created and placed in the etc directory, and you're pretty much ready to go, and you can do the restart. When once you make those modifications, by the way, you should restart the rsync daemon, so that way it'll start. So now what we're going to do is let's take a look at the folder here. So in backup, we have nothing here. So we're about ready to begin and start the data replication. So let's go back to DSS, and where we want to go is we want to go to maintenance, data replication, and here we're going to create a task name. So we'll just create a simple one called test. And then we'll have a share called source, and that's where all our files are. Now if you notice, it immediately grabbed the snapshot. That's because we assigned it from the volume manager when creating a NAS logical volume. The destination IP address is going to be the Ubuntu desktop version that we have. That's our virtual machine. And of course, we want to go ahead at this point is use the scanning method to scan for that Ubuntu server to see that there are shares that we found that we can go ahead and select from that we're going to place in our destination. So if you remember the rsyncd.com file, that's where we had the backup, and we placed that in that brackets. Here we're going to put the username. We have one already pre-built, so we use Open-E. I can't use dashes in there. We had issues with that, so you want to make that a note. Here we're going to put the password. In this setup, I am going to log the replication errors. So if I want to look at the errors, if there's any issues, perhaps that would be a good thing to keep on. For the access control list, I'm not going to use it because I really don't need the access control list, which actually will save me time in doing the replication. So if you have many files that you need to replicate that you don't need the access control list, this will speed up the process. And of course, I'm going to leave the default don't delete files, and this is for what's not matching on the source to destination. So here we'll go ahead and create our task, and we'll hit apply. Keep in mind that you can replicate internally into DSS as well. We get a lot of questions on that because you don't want outside traffic going outside of the DSS, so you want to replicate internally into the DSS, and perhaps I can show you that. So let's go ahead and finish this so we can demonstrate it, and we'll try to test that so that way I can show everybody how to do that. If I click here on the left, you'll see my task, and here you'll see the attributes and values that we have placed. So this verifies that we are using the destination IP address of the 4th octet of 36 because we're on a 1 network from the 192.168.1 network. Here the source is the share that we are selecting from, the snapshot that we have assigned to, the backup share to the destination share to the called backup, and of course the agent login information. Now we'll go ahead and just create what type of schedule do we want. Keep in mind that you have two types. We have the intervals, which can be done in increments of 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes, 1 hour, and so forth, as you could see. You might have a need for that if it's something that's very important, especially for accounting or systems or data that is going to be updated periodically more than within an hour. You might want to look into that. That's very critical to you. If it's just one time and you could set that value possibly so that it might be traffic on the network, or you might do it after hours, or if it doesn't impede on your network, or you may have a separate network that you can have multiple NICs in DSS, and you can basically have that replication go over that in those two NICs. Even if you used a crossover cable, would be a good idea. But in some cases you can do it after hours. Now if you look here, we're using a 24-hour time frame. So here we're going to look at the time currently is 14 10, so we'll just select it for 1411. Actually, let's go 1412, and that'll give us a few extra seconds. So if you see on the bottom here, now we have the details for our scheduled backup replication to the backup directory. So here we look at it, it's for today. Of course, I can assign more days to this. What we'll do is we'll just click up here on the left. You'll see the data replication, and then of course down on the bottom you see the task. If we click on here, we're just going to get some information that's similar to what you just saw on the task scheduler before the screen. What we're going to do is, instead of waiting the extra 40 seconds to keep things moving, we're going to force it. Now you could do a manual to force the task manually, and this is by clicking on the play button. Normally it would start on the time frame that we told it, which was at 2:12. So we're going to wait for a second. What's happening here right now is that the snapshot is being called upon. So data replication is informing the snapshot to take the snapshot of the NAS volume, which then it's going to replicate from that snapshot. Which, you think about it, it's a little bit faster than if you were to do it per file. And so the snapshot provides performance. So we see that it started and now it's completed, so it's that fast. What you want to do is you want to verify in status task. And here you could see the information that it was just done. So here we have 2 o'clock at 2:12, the test that we just created, the snapshot. So here the snapshot is first, and then after the snapshot, the data replication takes the data and replicates the files from the snapshot. So here we see we have an overall 15 files, 9 files that were transferred, and then of course what we have is directories, so that's where you get that extra count. As you can see, we sent over roughly over 8 megs of data. So now let's go ahead and verify the data is on the Ubuntu system. Here we remember, it looks like it already showed up. This was from the backup directory. Let's take it back so we can take it here. So this was the directory that we created and folder, and in here are the files that we replicated. And I just basically put these in here for everybody's information, so if you ever want to edit these files, make sure that you have the rights to it to edit them if you're not root, so be careful of that. So you can edit also with just a basic editor here as well, instead of using the MC edit command. So here we can see that the data replication worked. Now I want to show you also that you can use the data replication internally. So let's take a look at that. Let's say you wanted to possibly improve this new RAID array. So let's say this old array on, let's say, unit S001, and you've just built a newer array, and you want to be able to bring the data from S001, your NAS shares, to unit S002. So here what we'll do is we'll go ahead and format the volume. This is one of my RAID arrays that I have on my LSI controller that I'm using. And so it's going to go ahead and format it with our XFS file system. So it doesn't take very long. And then what you're going to see on the left side is VG01. So that way you now have a new volume group. Okay, so now in this new volume that I have, obviously it's empty. So let's say I'm going to be decommissioning VG00. So let's go ahead and create a new NAS volume. Now, let's say we wanted to go ahead and we wanted to replicate the data internally into DSS, so we don't want outside traffic going outside the network. So what we'll do is go ahead on VG01 to create a NAS share. So here we'll create the same naming convention that we used on the Ubuntu system. Call it backup. And we will select the logical volume. Let's go back first, volume groups. And we have our NAS volume. Now, we can just take, let's say we take source, and we'll create a new backup, let's say to any one, LV001, and we specify the path, hit apply. Now what we'll do is we'll specify that in backup, we want to make sure that we can see all files. So if we look here, we'll set to guest to anyone. We know backup doesn't have any data in it, so we'll verify that. So it's empty. We also want to make sure that we enable the users to be able to view that data. And we'll apply that. Now we'll scroll all the way down and enable the data replication agent. Here we're going to specify the same naming convention, so we'll just use something very simple, Open-E. And we'll keep the password simple. You can also have an allow IP address restriction, so only that IP address is allowed to use the data replication or to traverse the files in the share. So we'll hit apply. Now, let's go ahead to our data replication function. We'll create a task, another one called test2. We'll select the source share. Immediately it grabs a snapshot. Now the destination, I'm going to use an internal IP address, a loopback address. We'll go 127.0.0.1. And it found 3 shares. And we're going to select backup. Here we're going to use the user as we mentioned before, so we'll use the same one. And of course the password. I'm not going to be really concerned about the access control list, but we'll leave it on for this time. Now we've already created our tasks, and on the left you see the tasks. Now let's create the schedule. So in this case I'm really just copying the files over. We're probably decommissioning that share, and we'll just select a weekly, go 2 o'clock on Tuesday. And of course it's 18 minutes now, so we'll just state 19. So at 2:19 this task will take off, start, and then be able to replicate the data from that source to backup without being going outside the network. So again, we'll just go up to the top to data replication, and we see this task. And let's go ahead and manually push it. Normally it would kick off, and we just don't want to wait because of the recording time frame that we're on. So here you'll see that it's going to take to the snapshot. It's going to take a snapshot of the NAS volume for that share. Data replication now is going to go ahead and do the replication from the snapshot to the backup share. To verify, again, you can go to status, tasks. And if you had an error event or failed event, you will see that in the event viewer down here on the left. So here we see the snapshot was taken, and of course the task completed. And once again, it stated that it was successful and it finished okay. So let's verify. So if we just go to configuration, NAS resources shares, you'll see that if we go to the backup share, and now we'll look at the path, and here we see all the files. So that's it. I wanted to thank you all for coming, and I hope this was helpful to some of you. Take care, and goodbye.